Welcome. This is Hector Combo. Today is April the 12th, and I'm going to be covering the occult dimensions behind the corona narrative. And it's an important thing that we cover because it takes a lot of groundwork in order to understand the bigger picture, or what is the overarching objective that this global event is leading towards to. And like this is going to be something that is not necessarily a consecutive barrage of evidence. It's a different type of video. And I ask you to suspend your disbelief for just a couple of moments. And after which you can follow your own research and intuition and come to your own conclusions. Let's start with this first quote from Confucius. Signs and symbols rule the world, not words nor law. So this video is intended to lay the groundwork for my upcoming interview with preeminent occult researcher Jordan Maxwell. And this quote comes from Jordan Maxwell himself. And it reads, the more you begin to investigate what we think we understand, where we came from, what we think we're doing, the more you begin to see we've been lied to. The more you begin to educate yourself, the more you understand where things come from, the more obvious things become, and you begin to see lies everywhere. You have to know the truth and seek the truth, and the truth will set you free. Unless and until you are prepared to look at the whole truth, and wherever it may go, whoever it may lead to, if you want to look the other way, or if you want to play favorites, then somewhere along the line, you're going to find out that you're messing with divine justice. It's a very important quote. I illustrate this because there's a darker truth, a darker aspect, and I am just grateful to be part of a community of active individuals who are questioning the establishment's narrative. And if you're looking for that type of perspective in this time, I will recommend you go into Corbett Report. I love subscribing to their podcast, and I follow and research what they offer, what James Corbett offers. And this is a flashback episode on how to become a billionaire. And it talks about the myth of Bill Gates. It contextualizes it juxtaposes his supposed rise to power or fame, and underscores the reality that it's in order to be part of a big club, which is we're going to be talking about this idea of a big club. And here is how you join the billionaire. So says James Corbett. So you want to be a billionaire? Easy. Just come from a well-connected, eugenics-based, obsessed, elitist insider family and steal, swindle, and scam your way to the top, getting rid of your billions in a way that benefits you and helps to depopulate the earth. Now that's the hard part. Join us today as we study the master of billionaire-fueled, eugenics-driven philanthropy of our times, Bill Gates. It's an important, very important podcast. And if you're looking for that type of information, please follow, support James Corbett. As well, if you're looking for recent up-to-date information about Bill Gates and his scrupulous interest in this whole agenda to push the centralization of power and build up the framework of oppression, then please refer to The Conscious Resistance with Derek Bros. And he talks about, well, the charity paradox in Bill Gates' philanthropy. While we in the media or people who just follow the headlines, they see Bill Gates donating billions of money, millions of dollars towards charities, and we think, well, he's a good man. He's one of the good few rich people that are out there. But if you commit to some real earnest research, you'll find that he is doing it for his own self-interest, and the types of philanthropy that he commits himself usually decimate the population and really bring in the population agenda. There's no real other word I can use besides depopulation, because they're actively talking about how to curb the population growth, and there's countless videos for you to see that. So this idea of the occult aspect or the occult dimensions in a narrative, or the use of language that the media purposefully uses words that are contextually very powerful in themselves, but well, contextually where they're used in a global narrative that we're all going to die, that's very powerful. But these words of corona, pandemic, crisis, they in themselves conjure up power. And this power is what I want to deconstruct in my upcoming interview with Jordan Maxwell. Please do not miss that. This is another type of video where I'm trying to think in a more abstract mind in connecting the dots. This is not about hard-hitting evidence. We have to look at the big picture. On the previous videos that I created, I showed the evidence. I show that there's overestimated models that are closed to the public and are used by these media analysis without question, and are typically inducing a sense of fear, which is lowering our immunity and creating this story that if we stay indoors and stay away from people, that we're going to be fine. And then there's the other toxic part of this, where they say that the suspension of our rights is something that we need to do because that will keep things in order. So there's all this chaos that happened out of nowhere. No one could predict it. And now the government is coming in with their rule of law, their order. So that's an important thing for us to remember, that there is the evidence that is contradicting the mainline narratives. But on this video, we're going to go beyond that and start talking about the other inconvenient connections that really bring about something much more deeper, and I don't want to say the word scarier, but more complicated. So another thing that I want to lay the foundation in this video is that the American empire is not necessarily just the government. It's interconnected with media companies, think tanks, billionaires, celebrities. So the most powerful, notorious individuals in our society, they just so happen to agree in certain aspects of what they say, which is usually, a government-approved line. That's really the thing to emphasize here, that there is no disconnect between what the corporate media control narrative is saying and what the Washington, D.C. Babylon powerhouse of corruption is doing. Yes, there might be a difference of opinion between different camps of this mafia. Maybe Trump says something that goes against the sharks that are surrounding him, and perhaps he believes in, the nation state. Maybe those are some nice details to get ourselves entrenched into thought and cul-de-sacs of thought. This is not something we're going to get caught up in this video. I want to be clear that this is something beyond the left and the right, beyond the Coca-Cola and the Pepsi. Now, during this pandemic, while we were locked down, there was an amazing documentary that outlined something that is so dark and nefarious that we choose not to believe it and we ignore it. And this documentary, I'm going to be sharing about 2 minutes, 3 minutes, because it really emphasizes the point of what I'm trying to say. It is called Out of Shadows. And it dovetails the story of a stuntman who made it into the Hollywood Matrix, and he had a fatal injury, which made him rediscover who he was by connecting with someone that was challenging his world mindset, his indoctrinated mindset. So let's take a listen. Here, just to contextualize it, on this part of the video, it's talking about the media, the government, and their tactics to keep people in line, especially those who are in the government, and how to push a one-line or a narrative that everyone is on board.
Favorite tactic are honeypots. And I work with CIA psychologists, and they're dirty.
I always felt that every house should have its own secret panel.
Oh, I see. You lift this up.
This is a trap door. It opens up and looks into the cave, or what time is called the Wu Grotto.
Oh, boy.
They're running blackmail operations where they're getting very well-known government and private industry elite people in compromising positions at the Playboy Mansion, on Epstein's plane, on Orgy Island, and they're photographing them. And after that, it's like Congressman so-and-so or CEO so-and-so. I wouldn't bring that up if I was you, because we got photographs of you with a 14-year-old girl on Epstein's plane, for example, and you talk about shutting somebody up permanently. That's how they do it.
What happens in the grotto stays in the grotto.
Okay.
Look, it's pretty simple if you think about it. To control the population, you have to control the people messaging the population. Some of these stars have 20, 30 million followers. That's more followers than CNN, Fox, ABC, NBC. These people have to be controlled. They can't just go off a message and start saying whatever they want to say. They have to be somewhat reined in. They have to be controlled, or they do not get the platform to have the voice that they have.
Forget the politicians. The politicians are put there to give you the idea that you have freedom of choice. You don't. You have no choice. You have owners. They own you. They own everything. They own all the important land. They own and control the corporations. They've long since bought and paid for the Senate, the Congress, the state houses, the city halls. They got the judges in their back pockets. And they own all the big media companies, so they control just about all of the news and information you get to hear. They got you by the ball. It's a big club, and you ain't in it.
See, that's an important thing, too. Again, it's a big club and you're not in it. How do they control the population? Well, they centralize the ownership of media companies in a few hands. And as you can see in this graphic, it shows that there are so many connections that are going back to the Trilateral Commission, Council on Foreign Relations, Bilderberg meetings. And so this is not just one graphic to stop at. There are other graphics in which it shows that the entirety of different disparate media companies, quote unquote, are actually owned by top 6 major media companies such as Disney, Warner Brothers, so on and so forth. So that is how they control the message that is given to the masses. So that's an important documentary for us to look into, because it really debunks the whole idea that we have different choices in our media. It's not true. These are controlled choices, and some of these representatives or puppets or celebrities, they are only famous in as much as they are allowed to toe the line. You know, you don't rise to fame if you don't play ball. You got to be part of the boys. You want to make sure that you don't step outside of the line, and you keep your mouth shut and you follow orders. And if you do speak, it's going to be the party's line. That's an important thing. Again, it's an important thing to remember that this is not just an isolated random event where all these different people are suddenly on the same page and government-approved scientists are given the spotlight. But meanwhile, people, experts, researchers who want to question it and bring about a positive message that actually talks to people in a reasonable manner and tells them to embrace their human nature, those types of experts are not given any light. It's about controlling the message. And this message is order out of chaos, meaning, look, everything is coming into crisis. Things are completely, upside down. No one could predict it. And as if you've seen some of the previous videos and some of the source material that I provided, especially with Corbett Report, that they did have some foreknowledge, and the intelligence communities do research these things. To quote Edward Snowden, this framework of oppression is just so happens to be very convenient for the authority figures. And it's this idea that it could not have been foreseen is not necessarily true. Okay, so that's the big club. The big club is a bunch of billionaires who happen to have a certain idea to reduce the population, control different types of information, because if you question the vaccines that are supported by Bill Gates, then you are going to jail. You're going to be enemy of the state. You're guilty of criminal thought. So, okay, so that's the back work. Okay, what I am doing with these series of videos, if you're persistently seeing them, and maybe you don't have to see the whole video, but I am stepping closer and closer to some message that is not necessarily just the media's narrative. I'm going beyond debunking the myth of authority and showing you that the people in control have a conspiracy, or they conspire, collude, and collaborate with each other to bring about their type of worldview. It's nothing new. Wannabe dictators are all around through history. And here is the other angle. Again, it's important. The occult dimensions of the narrative. What is happening, and what are they not saying? What is the popular culture been telling us for years and years? So the popular culture is not just a happenstance, a couple of people coming together and writing a show or a movie or whatever. There are so many mechanisms and systems that come together in making a movie. And there is, again, if you follow the information in this documentary, Out of Shadows, it clearly defines that there is a military connection between Hollywood and the United States military. And it's not just a couple of people here and there. No, it's a massive network, and some of these people who are interconnected, have a different philosophy than we do. And it's not necessarily, Christian, and it's not necessarily pro-America. It's more about their satanic rituals and their abuse of other people's perspective. And so, again, suspend your disbelief for a couple of moments. And if this doesn't seem like this is a truth intuitively, at an intuitive level, then reconsider it, meditate for a bit, open your mind, open your heart, and then ask yourself, could this really be true? And if this is true, why haven't I heard about this? So let's go down some of these examples, because it's an important thing. All right. So when we talk about Illuminati conspiracies, or, a lot of the bunk that is in YouTube and in the web in general rushes to conclusions. They usually are not very rigorous with their arguments, and they expect people to believe them just because they put in these different random or disparate connections. That's not what you're looking at here. I'm not here to indoctrinate you with what I believe. I'm just here to show you the pattern that I see, because I know intuitively you can see it too. So the Denver International Airport, if you haven't seen these, while being in the Denver International, it's quite a sight. It's like people just pass through it. They don't really pay attention. And to those who do, the very few individuals who notice it, their reaction is not necessarily someone of positivity, because the message underlying here we have a massive militaristic figure wearing a gas mask, pokes stove in the butt, and an infinite line of mothers cry while holding dead babies. Is this what you want to see before boarding a plane? That's an important question. Why are these pieces of art posted all around the Denver International Airport? Again, there's many people who've done this research, but we're using pieces of popular culture to underline that we have been pumped with fear for a while, especially with movies such as 2012, which shows that, there's going to be a time where the crisis, or there's a natural crisis where the elite have foreknowledge of the event that will happen, and they prepare themselves, and then they transition into a new world order. In this instance, it was a natural catastrophe, quote unquote, and then, the elite got themselves out of it because they had the money and the forethought to get prepared. Meanwhile, they left millions of people die. There are so many other history lessons for us to look into, but popular culture is giving us this message as well. So if there's lessons in history, and this is being pushed by popular culture, and the very same people who are now in control of giving us a solution have been unscrupulous in their interest with vaccination and their association with Jeffrey Epstein and all these other nefarious people, then one starts questioning, okay, well, what do they actually believe? Dr. Fauci might say something while he's on television, but meanwhile, he will say something completely different while he's writing a white paper or research document. And so that's the thing. They will say one thing in the media, in the public light, but meanwhile, while they have their secret meetings or they have their think tank meetings, they will talk about what they see as the future. And so what does that future look like, or how can this possibly be true? Well, again, if you looked into the video from The Conscious Resistance from Derek Bros, he talks about one of the scenarios about that was foreseen by the Rockefeller Foundation, scenarios for the future of technology and international development. So this was published on May 2010, and it gives some of the research by futurists and analysis and what they see as will happen or occur in the future. And one of the scenarios is very interesting because it literally is what we're looking at right now. And it's talking about lockstep, and you can find it again on page 18, and the information in the document will be given to you on the sources below. Again, this is an important aspect of us to remind ourselves. So if the people in control have been studying and analyzing models and projecting different narratives, and the media and the popular culture and the movies are saying that there's going to be a calamity, a crisis, and there's all that pump of fear happening in different major movies and telling us that the end of the world is happening, and the elites have secret knowledge and they're getting ready to transfer into a new world order, it's looking a little bit different. It's not just, randomness. There's a reason and a rhyme to a lot of these events. But I want to read page 18 with you. So just like if it sounds familiar to you, it's not a coincidence. Okay, so let's look at what they're looking at, the scenario narratives. The scenario narratives, lockstep, a world of tighter top-down government control and more authoritarian leadership with limited innovation and growing citizen pushback. In 2012, the pandemic that the world had been anticipating for years finally hit. Unlike 2009, H1N1, this new influenza strain, originating from wild geese, was extremely violent and deadly. Even the most pandemic-prepared nations were quickly overwhelmed when the virus streaked around the world, infecting nearly 20% of the global population and killing 8 million in just 7 months, the majority of them healthy young adults. The pandemic also had a deadly effect on economics. International mobility of both people and goods screeched to a halt. Debilitating industries like tourism and breaking global supply. Debilitating industries like tourism and breaking global supply chains. Even locally, normally bustling shops and office buildings sat empty for months, devoid of both employees and customers. The pandemic blanketed the planet through disproportionate numbers. Died in Africa, Southeast Asia, and Central America, where the virus spread like wildfire in the absence of official containment protocols. But even developed countries, containment was a challenge. The United States' initial policy of strongly discouraging citizens from flying proved deadly in its leniency, accelerating the spread of the virus not just within U.S. but across borders. However, a few countries did fare better, China in particular. The Chinese government's quick imposition and enforcement of mandatory quarantine for all citizens, as well as its instant and near hermetic sealing off of all borders, saved millions of lives, stopping the spread of the virus far earlier than in other countries and enabling a swift post-pandemic recovery. Again, here's an important thing about this dream scenario from the Rockefeller Foundation. The very idea that authoritarian controls saved millions of lives, stopping the spread of a virus far earlier than any other country. So that is a key thing to remember. They've been pushing authoritarian models as the solution for the future. China is the model. Authoritarian control over civilization is the model for the future. And this is what type of dreams these people have. They always want to envision a problem, a crisis, an event in which chaos will come about and order will be instituted. That's something that they do and they, meaning the technocratic elite, superclass of interconnected financiers, scientific experts, celebrities, politicians, and media moguls, and royalty. There's a book called Superclass by David Rothkopf, if you're interested in learning more about that subject. Okay, so there's more for you to look into, but essentially everything that we're seeing here is what's happening with the United States. Okay, so let's just read one or two more paragraphs. I just want to share this more with you. China's government was not the only one that took extreme measures to protect its citizens. During the pandemic, national leaders around the world flexed their authority and imposed airtight rules and restrictions, from the mandatory wearing of face masks, which I will cover that in a minute, wearing a face mask, to body temperature checks at the entries to communal spaces like train stations and supermarkets. Even after the pandemic faded, this more authoritarian control and oversight of citizens and their activities stuck and even intensified in order to protect themselves from the spread of increasingly global problems, from pandemics and transnational terrorism to environmental crisis and rising poverty. Okay, so that's their dream. That's what they thought was going to happen in different pandemics, and they've had this type of what they think will be ideal as a response to, to solve these types of crises. And one thing I want to turn your attention, I said I was not going to. This is not going to be a very evidence-heavy episode. I want to include something that really captivated my attention, and the person who was behind this video presentation, or who was interviewed in this media presentation, is someone who's a very intelligent, well-spoken person. Again,
and with that, we'll bring in a man who has
in the link below. And this is an important interview because it talks to a doctor. Again, the Conscious Resistance interviewed Dr. Shiva Ayyadurai, and he talks about the truth and lies about it. If you want to pursue that train of thought, please follow it through. And one of the important things that Dr. Shiva Ayyadurai said was that respiratory masks actually exacerbate the situation where someone has fluid in their lungs or has an influenza type ailment. And he also talks about different things that are being told to the public by these media experts about what they should do to take care of themselves. Staying indoors is bad for your immune system because you deprive yourself of vitamin D, and that doesn't help the situation. Stress-inducing reports or fear-centered reports, the fear porn from the corporate media narrative. Remember, it's all interconnected. There is not just one isolated, the Fox News is better, the CNN is better. No, they're interconnected. There are so many different people who are towing the party line. So this is a very, very illustrative, important video for you to see, so that you can also make a decision for yourself instead of just hearing the advice from government-approved experts. Now, I'm going to take a break from this and go into something much deeper and darker to illustrate what I mean with the connections. The idea that China, the United States, that they're fighting for different camps, meaning, or different ideas, or one's fighting for freedom, one's fighting for communism, is such a simplistic understanding of what is happening, because it's not just that way. The major governments in the world, especially the United States, China, and England and France, the major world governments, and this was covered again by Dr. Francis Boyle, and he had an interview with Spiro, and I will post that later on the links. He talks about how major governments are involved in genetically engineering bioweapons because that's what they do. And referencing this Out of Shadows documentary, it really conclusively shows the operations that the Central Intelligence Agency was involved with. Operation Mockingbird, which was the co-opting of media companies so that the state can influence people unknowingly. And it also talks about Operation Paperclip. Operation Paperclip bringing the Nazis to serve under the United States.
By channeling it through some foreign country. And we're looking at that very carefully.
Would you say that continues today?
Well, I would think probably for a reporter it would continue today, but because of all of the revelations of the period of the 1970s, it seems to me that a reporter's got to be much more circumspect in doing it now, or he runs the risk of at least being looked at with considerable disfavor by the public. I think you've got to be much more careful about it.
Platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think, and this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
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 It is extremely dangerous to the state not to have control over a centralized message, a narrative. It's extremely dangerous when information gets democratized, when information like the truth behind the powers that shouldn't be becomes democratized. And by that, I don't mean people get together and vote. Democratization, by that, I mean that there is a dissolution of the resources of information and it spreads universally throughout people. And that's what's so threatening to the state or the powers that shouldn't be, the interconnected behemoths. That's what's so damaging to them, losing control of the narrative. And one of the important evidence that kind of shows that there is no real opposition, but it's just on the surface level, is this article from Daily Mail. And it talks about U.S. government gave $3.7 million grant to Wuhan lab at Center for Coronavirus Leak Scrutiny that was performing experiments on bats from the caves where the diseases is believed to have originated. And if you see my previous video where I say it, deconstructing the headlines or beyond the headlines, I talked about an article in November 2015 that talked about the scandal of genetically engineering viruses from bats, coronaviruses, and using them or adding a gain of function to be transmitted to humans. So in other words, they genetically engineered a virus currently occurring in nature, and they made it transmittable to humans. It's extremely rare that a virus or gets transmitted from one species to another, and if it does occur, it's usually random over very special conditions. So again, watch that video if you want to know more about that evidence. But I love reading the comments on mainstream articles, or just in general the comments in everyday articles, because it just shows that some people really can see through the lies, the deception, and the manipulation. And I love this comment right here. So the U.S. gives money to an active enemy of the U.S. There you go. That question or that statement really, really encapsulates what the truth is. What is an enemy of an enemy doing giving money for biological weapons? You know, what is behind that? There's something much more. They're all interconnected. And this whole, Trump versus this guy or this guy, they're all interconnected. They all have a different type of mentality, in sense that one might be for Coca-Cola, the other one might be for Pepsi, but ultimately they don't live in the same reality as we do. We are not part of the big club. This narrative that these intelligent, hyper capitalist people, the gods of the marketplace, that they strapped themselves up from the boots and, made it luckily somehow because of their ingenious mind, is a myth. It's a myth that gets debunked in this particular podcast episode from James Corbett. Again, he debunks that myth. Bill Gates' rise to power was fraud, scam, theft. If you know the story of Microsoft and how it was developed, then you know that is true. So let's get a little bit deeper and deeper into this. So the popular culture preaches a narrative of, an upcoming crisis. And then we have media companies that they push a certain idea and they do it subtly and people don't question it. And it comes from The Economist. So it must be authoritative. It must be good. They must be very reasonable. Okay, for years, The Economist has been creeping out people for years with strange, enigmatic magazine covers that appear to make grim predictions. While some might say, who cares, there's a reason why this magazine should be taken seriously. The Economist is directly linked to the world elite, those who make the predictions a reality. As I wrote in the article, The Economist 2015 cover is filled with crypto-symbolic and dire predictions. If you don't know this particular source, the Vigilant Citizen, he used to be a media insider and has been running a website for 10 years, since 2008, and he deconstructs the symbolism in popular media, in news, magazines, and in different current events. So this is an important thing, how, this is not just some random person who just created a one blog. It's someone who's been actively researching and has had many articles, and I recommend the source. Again, I just beg you to have an open mind and think thoroughly with these patterns, these connections. Use your intuition. Don't fear believing into something darker, because it's just going to limit your reasoning. Open your mind, let go of your fear, and realize that there are some really dark patterns. Let's read the quote from this article. The Economist 2015 cover is filled with cryptic symbols. I wouldn't normally dedicate an entire article analyzing the cover of a publication, but this isn't any publication. It is The Economist, and it is directly related to the world elite. It is partly owned by the Rothschild banking family of England. Rothschild, Rockefeller, big banking families who happen to have big think tanks that talk about the crisis that they foresee, and they have weird friends, Jeffrey Epstein, and they sort of have the same weird parties and stuff. So those are the same people, okay? They have a part as a big club, and we don't have the invitation for it, and the very idea that they're like us is just buffoonish. All right, so let's continue. The editor-in-chief, John Micklethwait, attended several times to the Bilderberg Conference, the secretive meeting where the world's most powerful figures from the world of politics, finance, business, and media discuss global policies. The richest of the rich, the most powerful of the powerful, getting together in a conference, that the Bilderberg Conference. Remember, it didn't exist. It didn't exist until they decided to announce themselves after years and years of alternative media covering the Bilderberg Conference. But now, hey, they're here to help us, just like they were from the beginning in secret meetings that we were not invited, or the media was not invited. The outcome of those meetings is totally secret. It is therefore safe to say that the people at The Economist know things that most people don't. With that being said, here's The Economist cover titled "The World in 2019." Okay, so it has different symbols: Trump, the bulldog, Putin, the liar, all these other stuff. I won't analyze everything. So let's just analyze what pops out. And here's the thing about words, images, symbols. They are not just one meaning. They have different types of meanings, and they're all in the context and the timing that they appear. And if we larken back to Confucius, signs and symbols rule the world, not words nor laws. People have more recognition of symbols than laws or words. When you go to a McDonald's, you recognize the golden arches of the McDonald's. That's emblazoned in your subconscious mind. And there's a reason why marketers use the color yellow and the color red, because it physiologically makes you react as immediate hunger. Oh, look, McDonald's, just what I needed. And that's how these people who are operating work. And I think it was Edward Bernays on his book Propaganda, and he talked about how the people in marketing and the super class manufacture consent. But let's not get too ahead of ourselves. The 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. One of them is wearing a mask. Okay, one of them is wearing a mask. Let's enhance this little video over here. Right here, America wearing a mask. The book of Revelations describes the horsemen as harbingers of the last judgment. And this is an important thing, because I cover this in the upcoming interview with Jordan Maxwell. I'll talk about the idea of crisis, pandemic, and corona in general, and how they have a biblical sense. They, in general, they means the crisis, pandemic, quarantine. It means that there is a coming trial, a judgment, a separation of the weak from the shaft. And so that's what's important, that these words by themselves have a long history, have a lot of meaning, and they're purposefully used to conduct a narrative that makes our imagination go wild. Okay, let's continue. I have so many tabs, one gets lost, right? Oh, here it is. Okay. The white horseman is said to symbolize conquest, pestilence, and the coming of the Antichrist. This idea that there is an oncoming Antichrist is covered thoroughly in other channels. I'm not going to go too much into it. We're just covering the surface because we're going to work towards our research as a family of friends that are actively participating to question the authorities and their myths and their narratives. So, okay. The red horse represents war, the black horse is associated with famine, and the pale horse brings death. In today's context, one could say that the current crisis simultaneously brought some focus of conquest, pestilence, famine, and death. And here's another weird element found in the cover. At the bottom left of the cover is a pangolin. Although there are several theories floating around regarding the origins of the virus, there is one that keeps popping up in mass media. It was transmitted by humans by a pangolin. And this is from a different article in 2015 and a different virus. So we're not talking about just the coronavirus. Coronavirus, revenge of the pangolins. China has banned trade of wildlife, suspecting the exotic animals infected humans. What would they really do? The cover contains other details that are more relevant now than ever. A stork carrying a baby with a barcode. Bill Gates wants to create a digital ID through vaccination at birth. And I covered that in a previous video where Bill Gates with Gavi and other big globalist organizations are pushing for an ID and authenticated identity that is run on the blockchain that will have your medical history, will have your identity. And if you have your vaccine, then you'll have your pass to go back to work. Dr. Fauci talks about how they're floating the idea of introducing immunopass, or passes that allow you to go back to work because you have the immunity. And here's the thing, when they say floating an idea, they're just testing it. They're just challenging your resolve to question them. Because why would you question these people? They're all very rich, they're all very intelligent, and they're all very powerful. They have it all together. Unlike us, the unwashed masses who are too dumb to, solve problems on our own, and we should just listen to everything they have to say. Okay, so we're talking about the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, Bill Gates, these big families that are seen in public light, and we see them as just very benevolent people who are here to help us. And again, to reference Derek Bro's video, it talks about just their Bill Gates' scrupulous tactics and how he uses his wealth to make people believe that he's helping them, but in reality, he's screwing them over. So these types of parties, and there are so many videos on YouTube, and there's many people who've done this research. Again, this is not a paranoid conspiracy theory. These people actually do these parties, and they get together and they do this weird stuff, this type of weird stuff that you and I usually don't do. I don't really see people doing this at a family gathering or a family barbecue, maybe as a lark, perhaps, but then again, these types of people are doing weird stuff such as spirit cooking, or the idea of taking your seminal fluid, your blood, your different parts of your body that you, I don't know how to say it, that you take out of your body, like poop, piss, and semen. And they mix it up with a cake, they mix it up with different things, and they consume it, and it should give, and in their mind, they're thinking that it gives them some spiritual power. I'll talk about that later. And this is coming from me, someone who's done this research and has done the spiritual work. It's not just some random guy who doesn't know what he's talking about. I've done the work, I've seen it. there are chapters of Satanism all throughout the United States, but they're not necessarily how people think that they are. There's the anarchy chapters in which there's just your ragtag bandits of losers who are getting together in secrecy to tell each other how much power that they have and how smart they are, and everybody's stupid. There's that lower level of Satanists. But then there's also the other types of Satanists who are very professional, very intelligent, and very charismatic, and they operate in the public. And again, there's that documentary, Out of the Shadows, and it talks about the people who operate in government, in military, who also happen to be Satanists, and one of them being Michael Aquino. Michael Aquino runs the Temple of Seth. The Temple of Seth has various chapters, one of them being in Houston and different big cities. And again, I know this from experience because I research and I do the spiritual work. This is not a lie. These people get together just like good people get together to plan a soccer party or plan a football or plan a barbecue. Evil, dark, dim-witted assholes get together to conspire and hurt other people. That's just the fact of criminology. So let's look at this from the documentary Out of Shadows.
Or to an entire gaggle of gods and goddesses.
Michael Aquino was a high-level officer in the National Security Agency. He was and
God damn, look at those fucking eyebrows. Piece of shit.
You'll see him today, practicing Satanist. He created the Satanic Temple of Set, which he still runs. He was a high-level NSA officer. He's a member of the association. I used to be in the Association of Former Intelligence Officers, AFIO. He's a member of that. He's plugged in big time to the intelligence community, and he wrote a paper called Mind War. And Mind War was about psychological operations against populations, including the domestic population, using Satanist techniques and tools.
There you go. Now, I'm just playing a pause here because of what I told you. Look, Satanism has been conflated to be just the worship of the self, or it's just atheism and it's, rock and roll music and drugs and sex, and that's all it is. There's nothing else. No. There is various types of Satanists, and there's the spiritual Satanists who actually believe that there is a satanic god, and there is the Temple of Set where they worship this idea of isolated intelligence, and they think that they can make themselves gods by calling back or invoking or evoking past spirits that are found in the tablets of Egypt, such as Seth. And Seth is their idea of what this satanic overlord is for them. So let's continue.
Aquino was first involved in MK Ultra operations during the Vietnam War as part of the Phoenix program.
Well, first, I've been involved in intelligence and psychological operations for about 40 years in all levels of it and across the intelligence community.
You are a lieutenant colonel in the United States Army.
Correct.
Now, and how does the Army feel about you being head of the Temple?
Before we pursue this part of the video, this you can see it on YouTube. It's if you are online and you don't know what you're seeing, you're just going to see, oh wow, Michael Aquino takes down some guy on the audience for being an idiot. No, the satanic tactics that this individual, Michael Aquino, that he developed, researched, and worked with the military of the United States, the Air Force, are being used in the public. They're literally being used in the public right now so we can submit to fear. In this context, in this microcosmic context, Michael Aquino is accused of being a pedophile or talking about different aspects of his background. So he hasn't been prosecuted, but he's here. And now he's facing some of the questions from the audience. And one of the person is going to rise up and ask him, hey, I've been part of these satanic cults. They do actually do some really bad things.
What's that?
The Army has known about my religion for the entire span of my Army career, which began in 1968. The Army has paid very little attention to it, the same as it would to anybody who was, say, a follower of Hinduism or of Buddhism or any other slightly unusual religion today.
He was...
So yeah, that's that's one aspect of the video, but if you want to see more, please look into it. And it's just an important way to see how, by humiliation, by isolation, by saying, oh, well, you don't really know what you're talking about. It's me. I'm calm. I'm collected. I'm the expert. That's how that particular way of attacking other people is what the media does. And they learned it from this satanic person who is proud to tell people in public that he chose a satanic god. And, the military didn't have a big deal with it. They don't care. Okay, so now we have with the idea of the Illuminati. And again, this is just something that has been conflated by people who don't fully understand and haven't done the research. Illuminati is a secret organization, and it has different subsets, and it's not necessarily just one Illuminati thing. No, it's just a buzzword. It's a keyword. It's an umbrella term. There's different fraternal orders or societies or people who get together in high-level society who are wealthy, and they collude and conspire to do things. But here is one thing that I want you to see that is just kind of puts things together in my mind. Hopefully it does to your mind. But Microsoft uploaded a video from Marina Abramovich, or some witch occult practitioner who thinks that she's an artist and wants people to believe that she's just doing art.
I believe that art of the future is art without objects. This is just pure transmission of energy between the viewer and the artist. To me, mixed reality is this answer.
Virtual reality.
This was a unique opportunity to take the most legendary artists working now and capture them in such a way that they are translatable forever.
If you're a collector, you're trying to find works that break new ground.
I'm underlining these words because they're important. Virtual reality, translatable forever.
We here at Christie's believe that this is that. And it will be the first time that a mixed reality artwork is sold at auction.
There was always a question what you buy when you buy performance. You buy the video or you buy the additional photographs. Here, you actually can have the artist's presence in your collection.
The first thing that we had to figure out was you had to feel that you were in the room with Marina, not a document of Marina. HoloLens 2 was created by people who quite clearly have an interest in the audience forgetting that they are using technology. So the purest expression of artistic intent can happen.
They're all gathered around, conjuring up the virtual image of this witch. And this video is promoted by Microsoft, the very same company that is promoting vaccines, the very same company behind the Bill Gates is behind Microsoft and pushing the ID 2020 and other things that are anti-human, or at least they centralize the power in the hands of the few and give you an identity that they themselves will validate and control and surveil. And you're going to have to be okay with it because, hey, they're the futurists. They're the ones who can imagine these dream scenarios or these nightmare narratives and come up with the solutions just in time. Isn't that so coincidental? I don't want to see the whole video, but if you could find the weirdest freaking connection between Marina Abramovich and Microsoft, please, I challenge you. I'll do this one. Do me the favor. If you have any information, research topics, or connections that come together with this image, this big picture that we're looking at, please send them my way. I'll be happy to do it. So this video was uploaded by Microsoft, and after a while, thanks to Luke Radowski, I saw this. Microsoft just took down their commercial featuring Satanist Marina Abramovich, which had comments turned off. That's how you know. That's how you know it's a really good video, when they turn off the comments, right? And 24,000 dislikes, and now has been fully deleted. Okay, so I couldn't find the video myself. I don't know if they re-uploaded it, but here you go, Microsoft, and it's remember. Science and symbols rule the world, not words nor laws. And remember, the more we start researching and studying and following the information wherever it takes, the weirder things become. And surely enough, things are getting weirder and weirder and weirder. Okay, so the weird part of this stuff is just growing and growing. But let me stick around with with this idea that somehow, the weirdness is going to stop. No, I'm just going to keep on going. Okay, so the very same person in Microsoft, the person who likes, who's friends with Lady Gaga, and she will be dancing you at home with One World Together at Home, April 18. This is an effort to raise COVID-19 relief. World Health Organizations, are these people really demanding your admiration? So globalist organizations such as World Health Organization, Microsoft, Google, all these other, Amazon, Netflix, they are all on the same page about this, and I'm just saying specifically, why are a person like Marina Abramović, whatever the hell her last name is pronounced, why is this inspiring hope? This is her motif. This is her art. This is what she does. This is how she associates with other people. But I don't understand how this inspires hope. I don't understand how that type of art promotes hope, but hey, I might be wrong. And again, I don't want to get demonetized, so I'm just going to make sure I put some friendly pictures. But this woman is just, she's a piece of work. I'll say that much. And that's the persons that are being promoted for us to, really believe that they're here to inspire us to greatness. And if you don't already know, the Podesta link between Spirit Cooking and Marina Abramović and different things, please check it out, WikiLeaks and different wearechange.org, Spirit Cooking. Links will be provided below. But, man, it just gets stranger and stranger. That's just the beginning. That's just the surface level. And I sure did end it. I mean, we covered a lot of tabs. We talked about different things, but I want to remind you of my upcoming interview with Jordan Maxwell. He's a prolific radio personality. He's a researcher of occult astrotheological topics and different things. And I'm excited to present this information to you later this week. And I wanted to present to you this video before I even made that conversation available to the public, because a lot of people don't understand the very prima facie surface reality that we're really confronting. And I'm just so grateful to be part of a community of like-minded individuals who are actively pursuing the truth and questioning and challenging authority. That's what we all got to do. We got to stick together and embrace our human potential, because what they really want to do is tell us that we can't get together, that we need to just, just let them do whatever they choose to do, and us, well, just follow whatever rule they tell us to do. I'm going to end it here, but I beg you to really respond to this video in whatever shape or form that you choose to do. I want to make sure that this information is listened by at least 1, 2, 3, whatever small amount or large amount of people that can listen to this information, so we can begin the conversation and really push the envelope as far as we can with this question. Why are the people in control of society involved in satanic tactics, and why are they involved in anti-human activities? Or if you want to simplify it for yourself, what's the deal with all this weird stuff that just so happens to interconnect with the anti-human message of the world depopulation and surveillance and control and all this other stuff? I just want to leave that I'm going to leave it there for you. Thanks again for listening. I love you if you actually stuck around for this last, man or woman. You're very patient. Thank you so much. This is your friend, Hector Combo, pushing the envelope, asking you to use your intuition, follow your heart, embrace your human nature. Thank you.